Oh, huh. Right. Let's see. Hello, amigas, and welcome to Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast. This is Jackie. I'm here with my beautiful doctor. This is Maylin Gonzalez. Dr. Gonzalez, she's my optometrist, and I couldn't wait to have her here because she's got an amazing journey and story to tell you ladies out there. And you have to come and see her because believe me, I couldn't see before. I came to her office. I was blind as a bat. And she was like checking my eyes out and she's like, wow. And now that I have my glasses, I'm like, I can actually see. I don't have to wear these like funky $2 glasses from the pharmacy. Now I actually see. So I'm so excited that she's here to share her wonderful spirit, her soul, and everything about optometry and her journey here to Santa Monica, because she's not originally from Santa Monica, California. She's actually from the East Coast, but I have her here. I'm so excited. Welcome to Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast, Dr. Gonzalez. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jackie. I'm excited.
Oh, I'm excited too. And amigas out there, if you're looking for an optometrist, you got to come and see her. Her company is called Dr. ILA Optometry. Did I say it correctly?
ILA Optometry, you got it.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to put in the show notes where she's located and all that wonderful stuff. So let's get started, amiga. So Dr. Gonzalez, where are you originally from?
Okay. I was born in Cuba. Yeah, girl, in 1979. Made the cut. I was born in Cuba, raised there for just a little bit, and left Cuba when I was 4 to come to the US. And that's when I joined a small part of my family in New Jersey, and not a Miami Cuban, a New Jersey Cuban, a little further north. And, that's sort of where I grew up, bilingual, speaking Spanish at home primarily, still speaking Spanish with mom and dad primarily, and grew up in a very white neighborhood in New Jersey, and shell-shocked big time. I was just like, why is everybody so serious? Why are we so cold? Why is it so cold all the time? But acclimating to the States and growing up in New Jersey and sort of a different life at home versus life outside the home was very, very different. So yeah, originally Cuban, but grew up in Jersey. Yeah.
So what made your parents come to the States?
Communism mostly. As you know, there's not a lot of opportunities in a lot of Latino American countries, and the Caribbean is definitely part of that. And communism was definitely something that really wasn't working for my parents. It was incredibly oppressive, and they didn't have any opportunities to really grow anything in Cuba. If anything, the Cuban government, as you know, with everything happening right now, it was just taking and taking and taking, so it's a beautiful idea as far as like everyone should have the same and we should all share. But it's terrible when, you work really, really hard and the government just takes everything that you make and earn, and they take imagine if our taxes were 40 to 60%, if not more, and so mom and dad didn't really see an opportunity for us. And they were really scared for my sister and I to have to join the military, because that's mandatory in Cuba.
Even women
doesn't matter. And when you're a kid, I think maybe even like sixth grade, and the summers they send you to camp. I'm putting this in quotes. And it's basically they're working camps. Like you're working at, a sugar field or something. My mom told me, she was just like, as a kid, you think it's fun because you're going away to camp, but it's like manual free labor, basically, is what you're doing.
Yeah.
And, so my parents were really, really worried and scared about our future as women, as people in the world. And so thankfully, my dad's father was born in Spain. And back in the day, if your parents weren't like native Cubans and they weren't born there, they were able to kind of get you out. So my dad's dad was here in the States and was able to claim his son and was able to basically bring him with political asylum. And because my dad was married and he had kids, we were able to go with him. But the last couple of months of being in Cuba, knowing that we were betraying the Communist Party, We weren't necessarily safe. My dad was kind of being sort of hunted down, and we had to hide. And I mean, I don't remember because I was 4, but
Yeah.
it was really scary. Like we were definitely hiding. Like,
Yeah.
I hear stories about encampments with Jewish friends that I've had, that they're like, oh, my grandparents had to hide in a basement. It's like we had to go through some similar stuff like that. And even just leaving the country, the day we were leaving the country, as far as like getting on an airplane, like it wasn't just the Cuban government, but my dad's friends and even some family members thought that we were traitors and we were betraying the country. So there was just like, it was just very scary for my mom and dad to do what they did, but thankfully we were able to leave, and we lived in Spain for probably about a month, because it was like the easiest way to get out was to go through Spain.
Right.
And then after that, we went to the States, where my dad had his dad and some sprinkles of family, but mostly, that typical immigrant, like I had $10 in my pocket and, went to make it work and stuff. And, my parents went and worked in factories while my sister and I were basically learning English. Yeah,
Wow. Oh my God, that's like a telenovela. Really. That's,
totally.
yeah. Oh my goodness. And so, yeah, I mean, you were 4 years old, but I'm sure there's some sort of childhood trauma with that.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Now living in Los Angeles, California, where you feel everything and you're supposed to discover your soul and find, I've actually done a lot of, I've worked with healers, and I've worked with, I really believe in magic in that way. And, I've had these incredible journeys and experiences of like, kind of almost going back to those moments in my life. And, really missing my tribe. When we left Cuba, I've had memories like with my healer when I was working with him. Oh my God, it makes me sound like such a Californian when I say that. I was with my healer.
But girl, don't worry about it, because the listeners are with you.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I grew up with like my grandmother practicing Santeria. So like
Yeah.
going to a healer was just like, oh yeah, of course.
It's like going
And
to
when
the
he was,
dentist.
for sure. And when he was like in my heart chakra, I literally would see my family at the age of 4 and leaving and going to this like foreign place. And I remember as a kid, getting sick a lot, as personal as this could be. It's like wetting the bed again at the age of 5 and sleepwalking and doing all these weird things when I was a baby. And like now as an adult, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I must have been like super scared, super traumatized, completely like, and as an adult, I've dealt with a lot of anxiety as a human being, and like didn't know where this came from, and through psychology and psychologists, they're just like, well, yeah, hello, like this stuff happens to you when you're a kid, and all these new environments, even though mom and dad were always like super loving and supportive, it still felt like things had been ripped out of me without me knowing. And there's a longing sometimes that you have, and it's unconscious. But it's crazy when your world just gets turned upside down. I think when you're that little,
Absolutely. Whether it's 4 years old, 5 years old, even when you're in your 20s, like
Yeah.
if you get ripped out of something that you know so well, I mean, that is traumatic.
Yeah.
Wow, this
Yeah.
is fascinating. So now you're dealing with this, like now you understand what
Yeah.
happened. And what did you ever ask your parents, like, hey, do you realize that you scared the shit out of me?
Yeah, it's so crazy. I've done, again, going back to like wellness and healing, I've done it all. And I worked with a therapist for a few years here in LA, and we did EMDR, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It's electromagnetic, the disassociated resonance or something.
I was
It's
gonna say
basically, it's something
resonance.
where they basically go in your brain and they
Right.
figure out like where the trauma lives, and we try to like undo it. And I did a bunch of sessions with her in regards to, why do I have such abandonment issues? Like my parents were always around, they're still married, like nobody abandoned me. And then, we did all these things. So I wound up having to ask my parents these very intimate questions about like, Mom, how was the pregnancy when you were pregnant with me? Were you and Dad getting along? Like all these really interesting questions that I don't think enough of us ask our parents, and we really should, because the answers are interesting. And yeah, they were totally stressed out and scared for their lives. And even before I was born, like I said, we left 4 years later, but it was like this oppressive state and country that they lived in, where they felt like they had no rights. They didn't have any autonomy. They didn't have any autonomy to their own life and their own choosing, and so there was a lot of things that they experienced before I was born and then after I was born. And just being in another country, they don't speak the language, they don't know anybody. Like, how are you going to make a living? This stuff was really hard. And they tried their best, like most, I think, immigrant parents, to shelter their children and love their children, and to try to be like, hey, we're broke, but you didn't know it. You know what I mean? And like try to do everything that they could for us, and like give us the best Christmas that they could, and so, but yeah, I mean, now as a 40-year-old, when I've been able to slow down my life a little bit and feel more settled in other parts, I've been able to explore these things a little bit more and understand the birth of my anxiety, or the birth of my abandonment issues, or the birth of my, why do I get scared in certain situations? I've been able to actually really dive into that stuff more. And it really comes down to like the beginning,
Yes.
of where it all started.
I love this conversation. I had no idea. And I'm like, oh my God, you don't understand how my brain starts like.
Yeah. It's awesome. I love
This
it.
is beautiful. Oh my God. Okay. I want to explore more of that. But I know we have to get to, okay, you got to this country.
Yeah.
Eventually you got to this country, right? 4 years old. Now you're going through these schools and you're in a white neighborhood. So that must have been a bit shocking as well.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, ESL all the way up into third grade, and where, you have special aides coming into to the office. Oh my God, I'm not okay. We have, to the
The
classroom.
office right now.
Yeah, to kind of like teach me how to speak English, and I remember there, like, that wasn't a huge focus on reading and writing. It was just more like, girl, we need to like pronounce things correctly.
Yeah.
And ESL, and it's crazy, Jackie, because all the way until graduate school, so here I am, like high school, undergrad, pre-med, all the way into graduate school, in a graduate program, and being so embarrassed that I didn't know how to read and write properly still. And I know that sounds crazy, because you're like, what are you saying? Like, this doesn't make any sense. There would be so many words that I didn't know that were in a multiple choice question. There would be so many things that I was like, what does potentially mean? You know what I mean? Like, whatever the word was. And I remember asking some of my teachers, and they were just like, girl, you're kidding, right? And I was like, can you just like read the word out loud to me? Because I don't really know phonetics very well. And maybe I can figure it out. And it was super challenging language all the way until the end of graduate school. Was very challenging for me, like English. And I know that sounds bonkers, but as a science kid and as a math kid, reading and writing was something that I loved, but it wasn't anything that I could actually really pay attention to until after graduate school, where I was like, okay, I need to like get rid of this thing that I have, this thing where I'm like, if you were to ask me to dictate something and you're like, okay, Jackie's like, okay, Doc, I need you to write a letter for me. And I would feel self-conscious being like, oh my God, acknowledged at ACACK and not, and literally I would get stuck. And so when I finished grad school, I was like, I need to learn how to read and write better. And this is a huge thing. It's a huge chip on my shoulder. So I started reading books and reading and consuming like anything, like fiction, nonfiction, didn't matter. It was just like books and books. And I had a couple of my friends that were writers, and I kind of was like shy enough to admit that I wasn't great at reading and writing. And they're like, girl, I'll teach you phonetics. And they literally started to teach me, because when I was little, that wasn't the focus in these ESL classes. It wasn't about how to learn phonetics correctly. It was more about, at least for me, my perception was like, I need to speak this language correctly. It doesn't matter if I can write it or read it. Let me just speak it. And so, once I was able to, at the age of 26, to teach myself how to read and write properly, then after that, I had the confidence of potentially being like, maybe I can be a business owner because I know how to write an email now. And so, yeah, I mean, it's crazy, because I've talked to, sometimes we did some fundraisers in my old office, and we had one of my good friends had this really beautiful nonprofit, which was Reading Opens Minds. And it was for these kids in high school, specifically Latino and Black communities where they don't have a ton of opportunities. And so they came, and I wanted to talk to them about this stuff. It's like, homie, you don't need to know everything today. You don't need to know everything to create a career. You don't need to know everything to open a business. You don't need to know everything to apply to a graduate program. You don't need to know everything to go to college. it's going to happen if you're determined and you can do it. I thought of myself as being slightly illiterate, to exaggerate, but let's just use that word to say, up until the age of 25. And I already went through graduate school and I still thought of myself in that way. And I was still able to be like, okay, I need to fix this, you know, and that was for my own personal gain because I felt embarrassed and I felt shameful, you know? So yeah.
I know, I completely understand everything that you're saying. I'm like, I'm there with you. I'm there with you because, you know, even though I was born in the States, you know, coming from immigrant families and whatnot, you don't speak English right away. I learned how to speak English when I stepped foot in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And I, just like you, I had this teacher, this substitute, I mean, not a substitute teacher, a teacher's aide who taught me how to speak and read English. And I mean, I think because I'm very logical, I think that really helped in learning and processing information. And I was really good and I picked up the language very quickly because when you're a little kid, you're like a sponge, you pick it up really quickly. But I've always had that, even though I'm a lawyer, all I do is read and write, argue, read and write, right? To this day, I still get embarrassed because I get tongue twisted. I read things and I'm like, wait a minute, what does that mean? I'm glad for Google, but Google wasn't around when we were kids.
Girl, no. My sister would be like, look it up in the dictionary. I was like, girl, I can't spell the word. How am I going to look it up?
That's a conversation I would always have with my teachers. We'll look it up in the dictionary. If I don't know how to spell it, how on earth am I going to look it up?
It's such a bad answer, but no, 100%, you know, and I really, really, really had this chip on my shoulder for a really long time as a second. And also there's so many idiomatic phrases that I say that are completely wrong. Oh, that's a double-edged knife sword. You know, and it's like, you kind of get stuck sometimes and it kind of flags you a little bit, you know what I mean? Because sometimes some Latinas like us that have been here since we were children or you were born here, you know, we can pass and nobody would even know we were a Latina. And, you know, but the second you start saying some of these things or use the wrong word, you're just like, oh, I'm not a English. And the funny thing is that I've come to the realization that maybe it doesn't have to do with our it doesn't have to do with our race, more so that our socio-economical thing, where we might have gone to high schools that were not that great and the teaching wasn't amazing. Because I remember taking the SATs and bombing, okay? There was 450 kids in my school. I was 13th in my class as far as like academically, like 4.0, 4.1, whatever, like super, super like great grades. And I bombed my SATs. So imagine if we lived in a world that only looked at SATs, I would have never, thank God for affirmative action, because I would have never gotten into these colleges.
Yeah, you know what? You're not alone in that. Because I know, I mean, these standardized exams are very, very biased. And I remember when I was in high school, there was a teacher that said, okay, how many of you know what SLIP is? SLIP. And we were like looking at each other, like nobody knew. However, if we grew up in the East Coast with a boat, we would know what that word meant. So it's true, you know, these exams are made to, you know, be approved and good for those that are in the upper echelons, right? Because they're the ones that have access to it. So totally, I get it. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
So, you know, and so, wow. So, okay. So you were this amazing, smart kid in high school. You go through this SATs and you bomb them, but yet you're a doctor. So how does this happen?
Yeah. Work, like Rihanna said. You better work. It's funny. I made a joke. This was true, by the way. I had a friend of mine who, oh my God, I've been doing so many interviews. I'm like always down to do this. I had a friend of mine who was interviewing me about being queer and, you know, and being queer in high school and being a Latina and being a minority. And she's like, oh, did you ever feel like you were being bullied, or did you ever feel, and I was like, girl, high school was about getting the work done. I wasn't trying to socialize with anybody. Like I was a student, like my mom and dad were like, you have no job, You have no responsibility. You don't have any bills to pay. The only responsibility you have is to get good grades. And so for me, it was just like, that's what you do. Like coming from, my dad's a dentist doctor, and my mom ran his practice, with basically was an educator, and she was a math teacher. So I come from this foundation of parents that are like, you got to study, like there's no failing, you just study. And which is very similar to, the communist mentality of like, you think of Asian kids in China, and you think of that mentality of like school, 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 school. And in Russia, it's like school, school, school. And they put that into my mind too. So it was like, I don't care what these scores are. I'm just going to keep trying and trying and trying and trying until I pass the class. And, college was a big shock because it was way harder. So, I was an A student, and then I get to college and now I'm a C student. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So you better believe after the first semester, I was like, I'm going to get a tutor in everything that I can think of. And every class I got tutors for everything. Even the math classes where I was good because I had placed into higher levels, the teachers were terrible and they weren't really actually doing a good job of teaching. I'm sorry. I'm not saying this about teachers. I'm just saying, like, unfortunately, in my experience, like in one semester, you might get one or two good teachers, but for the most part, they're like, and, I was like, I'm here to be taught. I'm not here to like read the book on my own and figure it out on my own. So thank God for tutors. And that was my entire graduate school. It was undergrad and graduate school. I had tutors all the time, because I wanted to sit with somebody and ask questions. I wanted to sit and understand what was going on. I was just like, and unfortunately, lectures of 300 students, you can't just raise your hand and be like, wait, can you go back and like explain that again? Because it didn't make any sense. There's no space and there's no time for that. And so I was like, all right, well, then I'll create that space and time for myself. So I was in school all the time, and I was in summer classes all the time, not because I was failing, but I was taking extra courses to try to figure this stuff out, because I didn't think of myself as a smart person. I thought of myself as a determined person with parents that were behind me going, dale, go. We got to this country because we want you to be successful, like make the most of it, And I was like, all right, I'm going to do that, and oddly enough, my dad, as a dentist in Cuba, when you come to this country, as you have a profession, it doesn't matter. America wants you to go back to school because that's how they make their money. And so my dad was studying to get his license as a dentist and went back to school in his 40s. And I was like, homeboy doesn't even speak English and he can do this. So like, there's no excuse. I have no excuse, And so that was a huge inspiration for me to see my dad like get his license and his doctorate all over again. And going back to school, like imagine, God, if I went to another country right now and I had to do it all over again in another language.
Girl. Oh God, no.
Like, no, that's okay. I would just pick up the garbage. Like, I'll do what I need to. It's humbling to watch what our immigrant families have done for us and how hard they work. That it's like, to me, I was like, I owe you guys this. Like, this is my tribute to you, to tell you how much every opportunity you gave me. I mean, gay in Cuba? No, that wouldn't have been okay. So like literally my parents fought for our freedom in every sense of the word, even the freedom for me to love who I want to love, and it's like, when you're in the education system and that's your way out, then you just put your head down and you do the work,
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I 1000% agree with you. I think that I'd like to say that most children of immigrants have that determination and wanting to strive because you want to make your parents proud. That's like the number one thing.
Yeah.
And, obviously you got your exceptions to the rule. I got to bring in my legalese in there. There's exceptions to the rule. There's exceptions to everything. But for the most part, that is your intention because that they struggled so much to get to this country, to provide for you, for the family, and for everybody else. And so when you go astray and you go against the grain, then it's like everything that they did for you, you're kind of telling them fuck off.
Yeah, and that's not
cool. That's not cool at all.
And it's not even from like I owe my parents. It's just more like a human. To me, it's like there's a give and take in everything in life, and there's a yin and yang. And it's like, you guys, and it wasn't even on the forethought of my mind. It was more like, I want to make them proud because it feels so good when I get hugs and kisses because I made them proud. and there was a reward of them being proud of me in front of their friends or family or whatever. There's just, it just felt good. It felt good to have that confidence and that reassurance that like, I'm doing the right thing, and I'm doing something that at the end of the day is going to serve me too. This isn't just about them. It's also about like, I'm going to have a better life in this way. So it didn't matter what the obstacles were, it was just kind of like, all right, like my first class that I ever took in college was calculus, and I failed it. Fail. And I'd never gotten an F on like anything ever in my life in math. And I was like, okay. I'm paying attention. What do I need to do? And then you just reach for all your resources of like, okay, how do I get this? How do I get that? And I think that teaches you something as you get older of like, if there's a will, there's a way. I know that sounds corny, and look at me using American phrases, but if there is a will, you will figure it out.
Yeah, totally. It is so true. It's very, it's so apropos, because if you do have a will, you're going to make it happen no matter what.
No matter what.
You want it, you will it, and it's going to be.
That's
exactly.
Right.
Wow. So here you are, you got that F in calculus. Obviously that didn't derail where you were going, and you decided to become an optometrist, not a dentist like your dad. Why optometry?
That was a disappointment to him. It was my first job when I was 15. I worked for my dad's best friend, who had an optical shop. His doctor was American, and all the patients were Latino. So he needed me to sit in and just translate. And oh my God, talk about boring. But the funny thing is, how Latinos are. We need to hear like a little flour. You need to like sauce it up when you talk to people, right? As I shake my shoulders. And I remember this guy being like, tell her she's got glaucoma. And I'd be like, señora, le tengo que decir algo. You know what I mean? And like totally like Latino it up for her to understand.
Sounds and
just like, we have to talk about something serious, and like hold her hand and do patient care even before I realized I was doing patient care at the age of 15, to try to lighten the blow or make it more interesting. Because like homeboy was kind of boring, the doctor that I worked for, and I was like, this needs to get better. This needs to get more, because I'd watched my dad do medicine all his life with jokes and fun and having a good time. And I was like, medicine could be fun. Like, let's make it fun. So I got inspired. I thought it was so beautiful. I felt really comfortable in the optical world. Every job I got after that was like lens crafters, selling glasses. Like I worked every job you can think of in an optical position, all of them. And by the time it came time to apply to graduate school, I had to like tell my dad that I wasn't going to be an eye doctor. And of course, what did they hear? They heard I'm dropping out of school. And I was like, no, that's not what's happening. I'm just going to optometry school. And at the end of the day, of course, they were like 2 seconds later, were super happy for me and were really supportive. And so I applied to all the schools. I applied to schools out here in California. They didn't accept me because I wasn't from California. And I think they reserve spots for California kids. And so I got into East Coast schools, and I went to school in Boston. And that's when I was like, oh, this is a white city. Like I remember like leaving Jersey, where it was like, it had become very Latino, very like Black, very, and then I went to Boston, and I was like, oh, wow. Like I never felt so Latin in my life, like people didn't understand my style. They didn't understand why I spoke with an accent.
Yeah.
And
even though it was wicked hard.
And I was like, all right. And I was like, NPR, what's that? I came back like reading the New York Times and listening to NPR, and all my Latina girlfriends were like, girl, you got whitewashed. And I was like, did I? But that was a shocking experience to kind of live over there. But my eyes were always on California, like always. I was like, I'm going to live in Cali. I think the draw was Mexico. Since I was a kid, I've been very obsessed with Mexican culture. And my tatarabuela was Mexicana, and bisabuela, tatarabuela. My mom's grandmother was Mexicana from Veracruz. And I've always had this intense fascination with Mexico, like everything, Aztec art, all of it. And for me, LA felt like it was and is Mexican territory.
It is.
Let's keep it
Let's
real
just be
for
honest.
a second. Let's keep it real.
Yeah.
So for me, there was just like this like crazy like soul thing with California. And I was delayed in moving out here just because I was dating somebody that wanted to live in New York, and that's how I wound up being in New York for practicing and working in New York for 8 years. But eventually I was like, all right, I'm out. I'm going to LA, and that's where my calling is. And the second I landed here, it was like I drank the Kool-Aid immediately. I was like, where do I get my LA tattoo? I was like, do I get it in the back of my neck?
And you're gonna do the sign.
Yeah, I'm like, do I get like Thug Life? Like, how do I get
Right.
official? You know what I mean? So it's like everything felt so in tuned when I came out here, like just spiritually, physically, everything just felt like I was just ready, to be. And I never ever wanted to be a business owner ever. It felt so daunting. But when I moved out here, I was just like, oh, people want to know about their health out here. People are interested. It's not a 5-minute exam. Like people want to know what their well-being is, and they will take the time to have like longer conversations. And maybe besides optometry and eyeballs, I can actually have a real relationship with my clients. And that's when I was like, I think I don't want to start from scratch and work for other people. I think I have enough knowledge now of like what I want to do. And I had a very amazing mentor. One of my very good friends from back east, who had opened up her own optical shop, was like, girl, I will help you do this. Let's make it happen. So I had the help of my friend, who was a woman. Let's get it going. And I decided to start doing the research and open up my own company out here. Literally not knowing anybody in New York. I opened up my business within a year of living out here. And I remember when we opened those doors, I was like, how do I get patients? So, at the first couple of years, I joined like every possible, like, networking group. I went to all the events. Girl, I was so tired. I was going to bed at night, super late, waking up super early, working 6 days a week, and getting on every insurance panel I can think of. And again, if there's a will, there's a way. I'm going to hustle my way into the LA market as best as I can. And I'm not smarter than anybody. I don't have more education than anybody, but I can rely on my personality, and I love people. And, everyone always talks about bedside manner being very, very important. And I was like, I got this. I've been doing that since I was 15. And so little by little, the business started to build, and a business started to build. And I think by like year 3, I was like able to be like, not wake up in the middle of the night screaming,
With anxiety, like, where's the money going to come from?
Yeah. And I was, broke. Like at the beginning, I put all the savings that I had from the last 8 years of working into this business. And like, at the time I was with my partner, and we had roommates. Like we were just living the life of like, all right, you're going to bring beer, and then he's going to bring chicken, and you're going to make rice, and we're all going to have, that kind of like startup. Let's start from the bottom. And mind you, I had been making really good money in New York. So I came from like, oh, money's good, to like, oh, I got to live with roommates again. You know what I mean?
Oh God.
But that's to me, that wasn't a challenge, because it's like, just like going through ups and downs with mom and dad, where it's like, we were making really good money, and then dad had to go back to school, and we were making no money. And it's like, that kind of social economical roller coaster that you can ride sometimes. And I'm just like, I'm not afraid of being broke. Let's do it. And by broke, I mean, I don't want to be insensitive to anybody that's listening, in the sense of like not making like $1,000 a month or something, you know what I mean? Which is, again, a lot of money compared to a lot of people out there. Or maybe even $500 a month. It was just like nothing. I was working for free for a really long time. But it paid off, because I got to build this business, and I got to really change some lives, especially the people that worked for me, and some of the interns that I had in there. Cause I was just like, I want to inspire people. Because I did come from nothing, in the sense of like, again, we build ourselves in this country, and like, thank God we were able to build ourselves. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. As a woman, as a queer woman, as a Latina, as like, a minority of all, in every case, in every way, to be able to open up a company and a business in Santa Monica, California, which is a big city in the United States, and be successful. And girl, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, if I can do this, I need to tell other people they can do this, 100%.
Yes, exactly, amigas. See, she's my optometrist for a reason. She's badass. So you make sure you go visit her. She's in Santa Monica, California. And yes, it's not easy. It's Santa Monica. It's one of the richest cities in Southern California. So, but let me tell you something. What I love about Dr. Gonzalez, is the fact that she has such a high level concierge service, and that's the attraction. So if you're with these companies, these big companies that are like a dime a dozen, just please save your money and come and see her. She accepts insurance, because I went and made sure she accepted the insurance that I have to go, because yes, your eyes need the best, and I wanted the best. And so I went to her. So thank you so much, Dr. Gonzalez, for having me as your patient, because I'm very proud of having beautiful eyewear now.
You look great. You look great. Jackie, I will say, if I can say lastly, that concierge service idea came out of COVID, in the sense of like, there's a lot of things that are happening in healthcare that are terrible. And I don't want to participate in the terrible. I want to participate in the awesome. And awesome to me was automating my booking system. Awesome to me was making it super personal. You are only with me. There's no staff. I don't have staff anymore. I see less patients per day. It's almost like seeing your therapist, but I'm your eye doctor. So there's nobody interrupting us. You and I are alone in this entire office by ourselves. I don't get interrupted. You don't get interrupted. I get to do my best work for you. And I know what's going on in my company 24 hours. I know that not everybody can do something like this, but I can, and I can offer this to you and anybody, like, as far as like, it's a one-on-one and your copay is $10, and it's a whole hour with me. You're not here. I'm not like, okay, bye, bye, bye. It's a whole hour. We can do whatever you want. We can talk about whatever you want. We can take care of you any way that we want. And by we, I mean me. I don't know. I keep thinking we, but healthcare has to change. It has to change, because we need to care. We need to love. We need to have more compassion. We need to have more empathy. We need to listen to our patients more, and we need to be able to really address their needs. And to me, that's not what the healthcare system, unfortunately, is doing for us right now, because it's too many people all at once. If a doctor sees 60 people in a day, do you think they remember anything? No, dude, they don't remember anything. Like, I can remember things. I can remember what's going on. I can pay attention. As a matter of fact, with you, Jackie, there was a small mistake with your glasses. And I was like, Jackie, I got to fix this issue. Let me take care of it. And I was keeping you in the loop and letting you know what was going on. And this is the stuff that I think, unfortunately, in healthcare, it's like it gets diluted, because there's a receptionist, there's a staff member, there's a manager, there's a bit. Okay, well, when can I get to, when do I talk to the doctor? Oh, you get the doctor for 17 seconds.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah. I know. Yes, it's a horrible system that we live in. But I'm so glad that you are of old school, because that's what old school is about, is having that one-on-one, that conversation, that doctor that would go visit you at home. I mean, that's the kind of patient care that Dr. Gonzalez has. So anyone out there, please go visit her. I'm going to make sure that I put her details in the show notes, so you'll be able to reach her, because you'll reach her, not some secretary or some other.
That's me. You got it.
It's just her. It's her. So definitely, for all of you out there who are seeking to have wonderful eyes, look no further. Just go to Dr. Gonzalez. So my love, before we end this call, I always ask my guests if you could provide 1 or 2 tips on how an Amiga can handle her shit.
Amiga, handle your shit. Know your history, mama and poppies. Know your history. Know where you came from, and that'll help you figure out where you're going. As far as, like I said at the beginning, we started talking about like spiritual searching and stuff, and understanding, because I think a lot of us have fears, and a lot of us have preconceived notions of what we can be. And girl, there's no ceiling. There's nothing to break. There was never there. That ceiling is imaginary. And, it was put there by other people, other thoughts. And so be brave. I want to be surrounded by brave people, whether it's my patients, whether it's my family, whether it's my loved ones. For me, to any amigas out there that are hearing, oh, nah, girl, you can't do that. Girl, you know how many people told me I couldn't? The doctor I worked for, that I was 15 years old, told me that I probably wasn't going to get into college because of my dyslexic writing and whatever, illiterate writing. He's like, oh, you might not make it into college. And I was like, wait a minute, homie, you gonna watch me get into college.
That was kind of ammunition
Yeah, too many people said no to me, including family, when I was wanting to move out to California. They were like, why are you doing this? You're crazy. And you can't stop, won't stop, can't stop, won't stop. Those fears are imaginary, homie. They're imaginary. They don't exist. They're not real. You know, like I said, if you know your history, you'll realize where they came from. And when you understand where they came from, you're like, oh, look at that. I can undo this. I can undo this fear of abandonment. I was abandoned when I was 4 because we left my tribe, but now I understand that. And now I know what I can do with my tribe now. And I'm no longer at the mercy of adults or whatever. You know, I'm in charge. I'm in charge of me, and I'm not in charge of anybody else's feelings but my own. And to me, it's like, let go of that fear, understand your history, understand where you came from, understand the foundation of who you are, and see what parts you want to change, and see what parts you want to keep, and see what parts that don't serve you anymore. Because that's important.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Bring it, girl. Bring it. Bring it. Let it.
Jackie, all day, every day, girl. We should do part two.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do part two. Part two, definitely.
You know?
I love your tips. Yes, know your history. You know, interesting that you're saying these things is that every time I get on the mic and I have my guests tell me their tips, none of them are the same. And I have about now 40 plus episodes.
Nice, Jackie.
But isn't that crazy? Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy? Like, they're all different. And I love that. I love, love, love. I love what you said. Know your history. Fears are imaginary. Yes, if you know your history, you'll find out why you have that fear, and be brave and bold. Right?
That's right.
Be you. Ah, love, 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 love you. Thank you so much for being here with me this afternoon. I know you're a very busy woman, and I'm going to make sure that we put it in the show notes where you're located, and for anyone out there who wants to have a fabulous eyesight.
Jackie, I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing this incredible thing for our community, especially as women, especially as Latinas, and or anyone else that's listening to this incredible podcast. You know, I think you're doing a really beautiful service. So I appreciate you doing something so beautiful. We connected the second we met. And I love that you're doing this, because we all need support. We all need love. We all need to hear these different advices that everyone is giving, because as human beings, we have so much to offer each other besides, you know, stupid, oh, I don't agree with you. Okay, who cares? Let's connect, let's love, let's connect, and let's help each other grow and to be better in every way possible. And I think women, most of all right now, need it the most. We need to support each other. We need to love each other the most right now. And not shoot down our hermanas, and put them up.
Yep, put them up all the time, everywhere, anywhere, any place. We need to. That should be ingrained in our heart and our soul and in our mind. You know, to support one another, not break down one another. And I love what you're saying, and I'm all about that. And I really, really, really honor you. And I'm glad that you came here to share your wisdom, your journey, everything that has happened for you, because I always say it doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
That's right.
Yeah.
I believe that too. Thank you, Mama.
Thank you. Love you. Love you
and have an amazing rest of your night. And thank you to all the listeners that are listening out there.
Absolutely. Thank you, my love.